The search for Jay Slater is now in its fourth week, but we're still no further forward in terms of understanding what actually happened to the apprentice builder or where he is. There is understandably a thirst for answers, for some kind of explanation, which is shared by the family. That is why they remain here in Tenerife, why they are still returning to this mountainous region, despite the vast size of the area and the knowledge that they are searching for a needle in a haystack. It really can't be underestimated how vast an area this is. And without knowing how far Jay continued to walk after his phone died, it's almost impossible to narrow down that search area. A series of troubling questions have lingered for days now, well rehearsed and the subject of much conversation and speculation. But as it was on day one, they remain unanswered. It's entirely possible we may never get those answers. In the meantime, the vacuum created by a lack of a breakthrough and a shortage of information from the Spanish Guardia Civil has given rise to various online theories, some well thought out and well-meaning, others not so much. The family are in the same torturous position. To put it bluntly, we are no further forward than we were yesterday or the day before that. We understand a few details, but Jay's family share the same questions we all have. His uncle Glenn Duncan admitted just days ago that he doesn't even think Jay is here in this barren landscape to my left. His dad Warren says everything about the case stinks. But without the answers they crave, they refuse to lose hope and will continue returning here or until something changes. The awful truth is, without those answers, with the missing pieces of the jigsaw, there is nowhere else for them to go. For now, this remains the last place where Jay was seen on June the 17th. The Spanish police say they are investigating several lines of inquiry, but still, they won't elaborate on what they are. Their investigation remains a missing persons case. For now, Jay's mum, Debbie Duncan, his dad, Warren Slater, and brother, Zach, are the only family members who remain in Tenerife on this island. His uncle flew home yesterday, and his holiday friends Brad Hargreaves and Lucy May Law, among the last to speak to him, are already back in the UK. And the man who Jay travelled with to this remote region of Masca, convicted drug dealer Ayub Qasim, is also back in London after being ruled out of the investigation by Spanish police. He insists he played no part in Jay's disappearance and says that Jay arrived at the Airbnb alive and left alive. The police also say that he is irrelevant to this case. And so, with so many unknowns, the desire for answers remains. The truth is, for the family and for those covering his disappearance, this mystery is far from being solved. The questions we all have will linger on until there is a breakthrough in the case, until new light is shed on various aspects, or until Jay is found. In the meantime, the search for him and the answers continues.
But there's civilization and it's a tourist national park. Somebody must have seen something. Somebody knows where he is. You know, somebody may be keeping him against his will. I don't know. There's all sorts going on in my head, honestly. It's just awful. I don't wish this on anybody. I just want my baby back. We just need to find my baby.
Whilst there are massive frustrations, I'm sure, for the family and those who loved Jay, I think there are some small crumbs of comfort that can be taken from the statement that the Guardia Civil gave to the Sun yesterday. In that statement, they said that there are other lines of inquiry that they are pursuing. Now, anybody who's followed this case as keenly as I have for the last few weeks will, of course, realise that there must be other threads to this investigation. So many names have been put forward, so many question marks over some of the characters involved in this baffling mystery. But the big frustration is we do not know what those lines of inquiry are that the Spanish police are following. And in that regard, I guess many of the frustrations are still there for the family. Even though this search has entered week 4, the theory that must be applied is to rule nothing out, nothing whatsoever, until you have fundamentally proven that that particular line of investigation is either not relevant or has been completely closed. Until that point, still consider all options. People who are still speculating, and some of these armchair detectives actually raise some questions that I think are quite valid. Until all of these lines of inquiry have been completely explored, completely examined, and finally put to bed, they have to keep a very open mind. Undoubtedly, this Airbnb that Jay apparently spent some time at, and the people that rented that, and those same people that were possibly the last people to see Jay alive, should, of course, be completely bottomed out. That should have been a priority right from day one. I think the Spanish police made a grotesque error in allowing those people to leave the island of Tenerife as quickly as they did, and also to tell the media that those people were not relevant. I don't think the Spanish police had had enough time to thoroughly investigate that aspect of this case to actually prove that they were not relevant. I fear perhaps that it was very convenient for them to say that, and that perhaps that might be a decision they are now regretting. Quite simply, every line of investigation has to be explored to the nth degree until it is either ruled out or considered as something worthy of even more investigation. But the trouble here, and this happens in a considerable number of cases, is that sometimes people behave irrationally. They don't behave as perhaps viewers might do and I might do. People sometimes do odd things because that's just how they are. Of course, on other occasions, odd things happen because there is some criminality behind it. And that is what the Guardia Civil, the Spanish police, have got to try and establish. I've travelled to the costas in Spain a lot in recent years, doing various investigations, and it's an unsavoury fact of life that in certain parts of southern Spain and on some of the Spanish islands, there are very unpleasant people who are major players in global organised crime, from the Russian mafia to serious players from Britain, of course. Other countries, Scandinavian countries even, have got their criminal representatives down there up to no good. So when a young man disappears in circumstances like this, when one of the people we know was one of the last people to see him alive, has a considerable criminal background, that rings alarm bells, and all those threads of investigation should be properly explored.